Riceville, Iowa, and Memphis, Tennessee are worlds apart geographically, but closely linked by one tragic event: the assassination of Martin Luther King Jr. on April 4th, 1968. Jane Elliott, a Riceville, Iowa schoolteacher, was initially saddened when she heard the news of the King's death, but her emotions quickly turned to anger after hearing racist comments on the news and from colleagues at school. This fueled her belief that there is a collective responsibility to eliminate racism. She decided she would start this in her classroom through teaching her lesson, Brown Eyes, Blue Eyes. Despite negative backlash in the local community, Elliott's lesson gained national acclaim, and its principles have been replicated worldwide, creating a turning point in society's approach to racism. We all live in a diverse world that is not always welcoming environment for the people around us. Jane Elliott's lesson stands still as true today as it did in 1968. I was lucky enough to meet Mrs. Elliott and talk with her about her lesson. She's not the only one to speak highly of it. I also met with two of her students. Brown Eyes, Blue Eyes was a historic lesson that has helped shape the way teachers in America deal with racism in the classroom by putting kids on both sides of the spectrum. Riceville, Iowa was a small rural farming community in northeast Iowa. Riceville was the type of community where the people knew their neighbors and families felt safe. Most of the town's citizens were white, Protestant, and had similar moral beliefs. This led to harmony among neighbors, which stood in stark contrast to the racial turmoil characterizing the rest of America. In the early 1960s, segregation still defined the nation. Jim Crow laws, which created nearly a century of racial division in America, had only recently been overturned by the Supreme Court's famous 1954 Brown ruling. However, while racist attitudes were legally struck down, de facto discrimination was still going strong. On the evening of April 4th, 1968, in an attempt to deflate the civil rights movement, James Earl Ray shot and killed Martin Luther King Jr. on a hotel balcony in Memphis, Tennessee, an event that shook the nation from coast to coast. It was also the pivotal event that caused Jane Elliott to move her convictions into action. Jane Elliott spent the night of April 4th watching news reports on the television about the King's assassination. While ironing a teepee for her Native American unit she was teaching in her class, Elliott was both sickened and angered as she heard news reporters question leaders of the black community and asked what she considered to be an insane question. When our leader, John F. Kennedy, was killed, his widow held us together. Who was going to keep you in line? She described her reaction to this moment as visceral, and she knew at once she must do something in school to combat the ignorance behind such racist attitudes, and she would start it the next day. She was going to make her class learn really what the old Sioux prayer, "O Great Spirit, keep me from ever judging a man until I've walked a mile in his moccasins," meant. This became the basis of her lesson. She took elements from Nazi Germany by using collars to separate her class by eye color, much like the collars used in Nazi Germany. The lesson itself was simple. On the first day, the kids with brown eyes were the better, smarter, and clearer ones. They got to do things that the blue-eyed children didn't get to do. But on the next day, however, the roles were reversed. The blue-eyed children were the better ones, the smarter ones, and the cleaner ones. To bring this lesson to a close, Elliott and her class talked about what it was like to experience discrimination. As they finished talking, she assigned to the class to write an essay on how discrimination feels. The essays were later published in the local paper, the Riceville Recorder. The news article was picked up by the Associated Press, which resulted in a firestorm of attention on Elliott's lesson, Brown Eyes, Blue Eyes. Elliott was invited to make an appearance on The Tonight Show, starring Johnny Carson. What started out as a simple lesson to teach kids in a homogeneous town in Iowa suddenly was much more than that. It was as if a small idea was forcing the world to listen. As a result of her appearance on The Tonight Show, Elliott and her class became the subject of The Eye of the Storm, a documentary created by William Peters and aired on ABC and primetime television. While Elliott's lesson had a significant positive impact in her students' lives and was being embraced on the national stage, the reaction of the Riceville community was just the opposite. It was swift, harsh, and negative. Much of the community's action to the lesson was focused almost solely on Elliot and her family. Her son was beat up on more than one occasion. One of her students, Rex Kozak, told me about a time where her in-laws, who ran a restaurant in town, served no meals the day after the documentary was shown. And the day before, they served over 140. That just shows the type of negative impact that the lesson had on the community. And they viewed it as people thinking, what's so wrong with this town that she had to teach this lesson? Obviously, Elliot's lesson had an enduring impact on her students and their views of others still today. Elliot's quest to eliminate racism did not end with her class. She has dedicated her life to using this lesson in schools, colleges, and corporations throughout the world. Perhaps Jane Elliott's greatest contribution to society was that she refused to accept the status quo when she knew it was wrong, and showed others how to confront discrimination in order to make the world a better place for themselves and others.